On this channel, I specialise in making really complex looking images easy to create. So just follow along with my step-by-step tutorial of this painting and you will amaze yourself. Okay, welcome to another iPad painting tutorial. On this week's tutorial, I'm going to be creating like a retro futuristic sci-fi kind of landscape, and I'm going to make it as easy as possible for you to follow along. Now, as always, I'm using an iPad Pro with the Apple Pencil, and I'm using the app Procreate. But having said that, if you're using a different tablet and a different app, then I'm sure you can find ways of following along too. In terms of this app, I've opened an A4 canvas, which is 297 by 210 millimeters, and that's at 300 dpi. It is one of the default canvas sizes anyway, so that should be fairly straightforward and easy. In terms of the colours that I'm going to be using, I've already pre-selected some colours here and created a colour palette. Each of the codes has what we call a hexadecimal code linked to it, and each of these codes is down in the video description. All you need to do is take a note of them, type them into this area and press enter. The colour appears up here and then you can tap it together yourself. Or next to the colour codes in the description is also a link that takes you to my Patreon page, and you can download the colour file there for free to save you some time. In terms of the brushes, I'm going to keep it really simple. Within the luminance brushes, free within Procreate, there is a light pen brush I'm going to use, and within airbrushing, I'm going to use the soft brush at the very top. Now, it's possible I might also use the medium brush or the medium hard brush, but probably not. I think I'll get away with just using that soft brush within airbrushing, but we'll see. If you do like this kind of tutorial, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe and also the bell notification to make sure you're notified of all my future videos too. And with all that said and done, let's get started. So on layer 1, I'm just going to go to my colours. I've got pretty much a pure black here on the second row. So I'm just going to drag from the little circle into the canvas to flood fill and just get rid of the white background. Okay, so we're going to add another layer, layer 2. And there are different ways of doing this. Now, I did consider just finding a Google image of a grid and uploading it and distorting it, which is a good way of doing it. But I found that it gets tricky to actually manipulate it exactly how you want it to be. And it has limitations on how much you can pinch it into a vanishing point in the center as well. So in terms of vanishing point, we're going to go to the wrench symbol, turn on the drawing guide, which you can't see yet. I'm going to edit the drawing guide. I'm going to go on perspective. And then I'm going to choose just centrally, initially, a point for our vanishing point on our perspective, 1 point perspective. Now, it doesn't really matter on the color at this point. This isn't going to be these aren't going to be the lines that we use anyway, so it doesn't matter as long as you can see it. And I've got the thickness of the line on max, again, just so you can see it, and the opacity on max, just so you can see it. I'm going to put the assisted drawing on, and I'll show you what that means in just a moment. Press done. And there we have it. We've got the blue line for our horizon, and we have all these lines of reference to work with. Next, I'm going to go to my brushes. I'm going to go to the luminance light pen. I'm going to tap on the light pen, and I'm going to go to the Apple Pencil part of the brush setting. And currently, if you press on lightly, you get a thin line. You press on hard, you get a thicker line. Now, it's a little bit too much, really, so I'm going to turn that down. So I'm going to go to that slider and change it from max to really quite a low. I mean, really you could put it on 0 and you get a consistent line no matter how much you press, and that would be fine. But maybe I'll just want it changing a little bit. So maybe somewhere around 10%. So you press on lightly or you press on a bit more and it makes just a subtle difference. So I'm going to change my color. I'll change it for the first blue on the top row. And because on this layer we have the assisted drawing, or drawing assist rather, which is ticked here. So if you press on it again, it turns it back off. Press it again, turns it back on. We did that within the perspective drawing guide settings, but you can also adjust it there. We can start on any of these lines and it will only let us draw, and you can see I'm going completely across it. We'll either draw in line with those perspective lines, or it's going to do completely horizontal lines, which is perfect for what we need. So I'm just going to delete all of those to begin with. But I'm going to put the brush size on the light pen down to a much smaller size of about 10%, and well, I'll keep it a little bit back, 90% opacity. And we're only really worried about the bottom half because we're not going to add any of the grid in the sky. What we need to do is be able to see the bottom of the reference line and the vanishing point. And we're going to aim as best we can where the line starts. It doesn't have to be exact, but then we're going to take it all the way to the vanishing point. A little bit beyond is fine. And we're going to do the same for the second line. And if we miss it by just a tiny amount, Doesn't really matter in the scheme of things, but we'll do our best to aim as much as we can. Now, there is a slight difference in terms of the weight of line and the pencil pressure that we use. So what we'd recommend doing is pressing on hard when we start the line and then just easing off on the pressure as we get more towards that vanishing point. It's not going to make a massive difference, and we're going to distort it later on anyway, but there you go. So we'll just do the first few at the bottom. Then when we get to this one, I'm just going to do it slightly pinched in from the line itself, and the next one pinched in a little bit more, and the next one pinched in a little bit more, so you can see the gap between the line I'm doing and the reference is getting bigger each time, and then it's almost getting towards now the reference line catching back up with it again. And there we have a crossover point, and then maybe just last few, I can just fit a few more in at this point. I'm going to do some other features, kind of some rocky areas, some mountains, so I wouldn't worry too much about that area. Do the same on here. Again, just a little bit shy of that line to begin with, even more of a gap between the line I'm creating and the reference line. Same again, even more, and now it's getting towards the reference line there as well. Judge it once it gets slightly narrower, and then we can just cram the mill together a little bit as we get further up. Next, we're going to do some horizontal lines. Now again, just like the lines would snap and fit to the reference lines, it's impossible to really do anything that isn't a horizontal line too. So first line we're going to do just near the bottom, press on quite well for that. Then we're going to set another distance like this. And as we go further up, I want the gap between these lines to get just slightly less as we go along. Just place your hand, gather the starting point, because you don't have to worry about making it a straight line. It does it all itself. The only thing that really matters is that distance. Make it increasingly smaller gap. Judge it by eye, it doesn't have to be exact. We're going to distort it quite a bit anyway soon, so I wouldn't agonize over this. Oops, I undid that one. Try that one again. That's the double tap feature that is very useful, but also one of the features that can be quite annoying when you get it wrong. Now it's all bunching up a little bit at the top there, which is absolutely fine. Okay, I'm not doing it all the way to the vanishing point, as you can see, and there's a reason for that, and I'm going to show you now. First of all, we've got all the reference lines that we don't really need anymore. So I'm going to go to the wrench symbol again, turn off the drawing guide, and they disappear. And we can also go on the layer and we can turn off the drawing assist by tapping on that. And the next thing I want to do is pretty much get rid of that top section. So I can go to the selection. I'm going to put it on rectangle, and I'm just going to select from the point where I think it's actually all merged together, which is about here. And I want to ignore all of that top section, don't need it. But currently it's selected all the bit that we want to keep. So I'm going to invert that, which means now it's selected that top section that we don't want and everything above, and go to the layer, tap on the layer and clear that section. And all we've got left is the bit that we do want. But then I can go to the transform, distort, and I can further push the edges of this. Now I'm just going to be careful, try not to move that line away from the bottom. So I'm just going to try and respect that bottom edge like that, but I can pinch it out at both sides, and it's just going to further exaggerate that sense of vanishing point. And you can do that a few times. So I've done it once, press again, still on distort, again pull it from this bottom edge, try and respect that bottom line of the canvas, and I'll do the same from the other side. Sorry if my hand gets in the way. And there we go. We can go to that layer and we can tap on the layer and we can put on alpha lock, which means if we're not entirely happy with the colors of it, we can go to these colors now. So go to this blue, well, it's almost purple really, and with something maybe more like the airbrushing soft brush to an appropriate size, doesn't really matter, maybe about 50% opacity, and I can go in and change the color of these lines if I want to. Personally, yeah, maybe I don't need to do that. Perhaps I'll turn it down really quite low, so the 10%, and I can just subtly change it perhaps at the bottom, just so it's a hint more of the blue, and it gets more of the green in the distance maybe, something like that. So you just get a slight ombre effect, just slight variation in that hue. Okay, I'm just going to tap on it again, turn off the alpha lock, then I'm going to go to the adjustments, the liquify, and I'm going to use the push. Pressure is max, distortion is none, momentum is none. I'm going to put it about 30% size, and I'm just going to start nudging maybe this one that points towards the corner. I'm just going to start nudging it in places just so it kind of raises up and distorts a little bit, has a few subtle bumps in that line so it's not completely just a flat straight line. Not too much. And then the next one, so we've done that line, we're going to go for this one now. Maybe we could do that one a touch more, especially as it comes kind of close to us in places. Then maybe we should turn that down a little bit more actually, maybe more like about the 25%, we'll try that. The next line across we can really, especially if we're going off into the distance, we want a little bit of control. So we can again just further add kind of distortions to those lines, and we can go and just generally mush these up, create a sense of sort of peaks and troughs, really nice variation in a kind of lumpy, bumpy landscape. And again, we can do this over here. I'm just pushing upwards really. And then again, just do them over here. Let's create some really nice kind of ripples. These aren't going to be big enough for kind of a mountain range, but it's the beginning of the distortion of our landscape. It's easy to go too far in places, so just be mindful of that. Push it back if you need to. I mean, there is actually a reconstruct button as well, so tap on that, again select the size, and if you feel like you've gone too far, you can just brush over there and it puts it back as it was, which is brilliant. So anywhere where you feel like you've overdone it, you can just bit by bit push it back to the push button. And again, I can just further push this. I might increase the size, so it's something like 40%, and maybe I could just really start pushing at the edges here a little bit, having it raise up. Maybe back down 20% now. Then I'm going to go to my layers and create a new layer, layer 3, go back to my brushes, luminance, light pen, still set exactly as it was before, but I'm going to go back to perhaps the original color I used, just for the sake of uniformity. I can always go back in and change everything later. I'm just going to start creating some lines and ripples. I'm going to further push some of these shapes, maybe into an increasing sort of set of mountain tops. Now we started off with something that was really square and uniform shapes, but there's nothing wrong with having more organic elements to this too. I'm just adding a series of peaks and troughs, and sometimes it will hug the next line and sometimes it will deviate from it. Maybe I'll just encroach on the center here a little bit too. And just create a bit of a wobble. Maybe just some larger kind of peaks. And again, I can do the same over here. Some bits that really stick up, and then it can go back and hug the line, and another bit that sticks up like this, and then you can have it joining here again. Make some really high kind of points if you want it to be super dramatic in places. Something like this. Now don't forget, we've got a grid system, so there's no reason why we can't have lines that cut through the other way too. So, you know, we could take that point, apex point of the mountain, and bring lines down like we had there. And then for the next level too, and just keep thinking about lines that might cut in, trying to cross over the lines, try to make sure they're joined up as well. So I'm zooming in a little bit to aid that. But anywhere where there's a point, you can just sort of cut it through, perhaps. So I'm just looking for any kind of peak, any spike that juts up, and just bring a kind of, doesn't have to be a straight line at all. We've kind of deviated from the strict grid, but we're just bringing lines and a sense that the grid, you know, system is kind of carrying on, even though it's become more organic. In some senses, it does continue somehow. I mean, there's nothing to stop us really getting into dividing it up a lot if you really want to. Again, doing like a grid system going the other way. It can cover everything like that. It looks quite nice. So once you've got the lines that kind of cut up from the top, going more vertically almost, then you can have a series of more curved lines, almost follow the shape and cut sideways across. I'm going to do the vertical ones first. Maybe add a load more of them. I'm doing it fairly quickly. You know, obviously it matters when it zooms in sometimes too, so I'm going to take a little bit of time. Just trying to get these lines nice and neat, then I do encourage you to do that. Okay, I'm going to take that layer and tap on it and merge it down. So now we have all of that on one layer, which is great. I'm going to tap on it again, put on the alpha lock. I'm going to go to the brushes, airbrushing, soft brush. I'm going to change colors. I'm going to go for this purple, third color on the top row. I'm going to put it at around 5% size and about 20% opacity. And I'm just going to start now changing some of the color scheme. In fact, I'm going to put it up higher. So let's put it up for 40%. And I'm just going to start going over the bits that I want to change. I definitely want to change the mountain range from being the aqua color that we've got, the bluey green, and I want to change it to this other color. I'll do the same over here. Just go over it a few times. I don't want it to be completely uniform. I think a little bit of variation in that hue is actually going to look quite nice. And I'm also going to start adjusting it when it creeps into some of these areas too, because really it changes from being a grid to being ripples around this kind of region that hugs the very edge. So I'm going to have it start to change from the greeny blue aqua into a nice purple colour first of all. So when it gets subtle, smaller ripples, that's where it's going to start changing. And press on a bit lighter. Just encroach a little bit into this area, take some of that blue-green away. Then I'm going to change to, well, let's go from second from the right on the other end. And I'm really going to start adding some complete variation now. This pink, especially in these more distant mountains and nearer the top. So when the mountains are more established, I think this pink colour is quite nice. But I'm not encroaching on this section, I'm just trying to keep it up where it's more established, nearer the top regions. Like that. I think that works quite nicely. I'm going to go to the alpha lock, or press tap on the layer, turn the alpha lock off. I think I will go in with the eraser, set to the soft brush within airbrushing. I'm going to put it at, well, about 10% size and about 30% opacity. And I'm just going to slightly subdue some of these mountain ranges. I want them still to be there, obviously, but I want their power and impact just to be knocked back a little bit. Gives a sense, perhaps, just perspective. Just really don't want them to compete too much with these foreground elements. I want them to be slightly less. So this bit then becomes more vivid. I think that works nicely. I'm going to go and create a new layer, layer 3. I'm going to turn to the white color. I'm going to use the medium hard brush within airbrushing. I'm going to put that at 2% size and 100% opacity. And then I'm going to draw a circle. As long as we close that loop somewhere like that, tap on here and select circle. It should make it really precise for you. You can change the size of the circle. If you press the little blue dots, it distorts it, so you don't want that. Double tap backwards. But if you drag from the actual line, then you can change the scale and the size of it, which is wonderful. So I'm going to just move it. Still want to keep it pretty much central, but I want to clip off the bottom area. So somewhere maybe something like that. And then I'm going to drag and flood fill that circle like so. Then on that layer, I'm going to go to the adjustments, Gaussian blur, and blur that in to about the 10%. I'm then going to go to the layer properties, change the N from normal, scroll down to add. I'm also going to tap on the layer and select alpha lock again. And then with the soft brush within airbrushing, I'm going to choose a variety of different colors. So I'm going to go for, we'll try the second color from the right to begin with. Set to 15% size and 40% opacity, and I shall just go over it with that colour. Go over it a few times. We've got a really nice rich colour, which kind of blends in with some of the pink purple that we've already created. However, I'm going to move from there to the third colour from the right, maybe just the top edge. Perhaps I should turn the opacity down from 40 to 20. It's quite powerful all at once. So I'm then just going to start adding more of that towards the top. Maybe that can come almost all the way to the bottom. Fourth colour from the right. This is more of a red. Again, introduce some of that in. Then, where are we? We can go, well, we'll try that yellow, which is fifth from the right. And I'm just going to start putting this on the very top. I don't want to go all the way down to the bottom now, so I'm just lightly pressing this, allowing it to kind of blend down a little bit. Maybe I just keep piling it up a little bit towards that top edge. Now, if you feel like it hasn't quite blended in enough for you, you can always go to the adjustments, Gaussian blur. And again, it's not going to blur outside of the parameters of what we've already created because the alpha lock is on. But if you blur it, it's just going to blur those internal colors, and you can completely blur it out, or you can retain it. But I'm just going to blur it a little bit, so say 20%. Press on the layer, turn alpha lock off. I'm going to go to the eraser, and I'm going to put the hard brush with an airbrushing for my eraser. I'm going to put it down to, well, I really want to do this controlled, so 2% size and 100% opacity. And I just want to go in and completely remove areas where I don't want the sun to be. So I want to bring forward these mountain areas again. So I can just completely get rid of these areas and just re-expose the mountain. Then on this layer, I'm going to go to the selection, rectangle, and I'm just going to stretch out a rectangle just to clip off a nice big chunk of that top of the circle. Then tap on the layer, tap on that layer, and tap clear. And it's just remove that top bit. And I'm going to do the same again, probably with a slightly thinner line this time. Tap on the layer, clear. Again. That's a bit better. Selection. Clear. We'll just do that several times until we pretty much reach the bottom of the sun. And if you feel like it's just gone a bit astray, you can always go back over one that you've already done and bolster it, add even more to it, like that. Thicken it up. Maybe just one final one at the bottom section. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfectly, that getting thinner and thicker. And that layer, I'm just going to go to the adjustments, use the bloom, and I'm going to put that up to, well, let's put it to 100%, why not? It really puts in a glow straight away. Tap on the layer again, put on alpha lock, brushes, soft brush, and we have the add-on, so it's going to create a nice glow. So again, we're going with these colors. I'm going to go for the second color on the bottom row, in fact, and let's just really build in some warmth back in. I think by creating that glow, it's really nice, but it has taken some of that rich, warm color away. Again, maybe we'll go for this orange, the fourth, go for like between the yellow and the pink, add some of that in, that's quite nice. Next, I'm going to slide that layer to duplicate it, and again, it's going to really ramp it up, but I want to go to the top version will do, with the eraser set to, needs to be a soft brush again, with an airbrushing, 10% size, 30% opacity, and perhaps I just need to, again, remove some of these bottom areas. Take from the edges there. And we want to preserve some of that, because if I deselect it completely, you can see it has added. We definitely want to keep some of that. I can also try this with layer 2, so slide it and duplicate it, and it has really ramped up the effect again, but I don't want everything to be super bright. So again, on that top layer with that eraser, so that's 30%. Again, I can just remove, perhaps I'll put it even higher actually, 60% eraser. Remove the bits that I don't want to be ramped up, so maybe the more distant areas I'll subdue back again, but it really helps then kind of sell this more foreground area again. And again, I'll remove that layer, so you can see it has ramped it up, it does help. And we could do same duplication with the layer we've just erased some of it on, so it even further pushes this area, and that starts to help. I'm going to go to the bottom sun, slide, duplicate it. So again, we've got that really nice bright. Go to the bottom version of it. So we've got 3 versions. We've got the one with some highlights on top, the standard one, and then this bottom one. I'm going to go to the adjustments, Gaussian blur, and blur it in to about the 15%. And then also tap on the symbol. And if I have none of that, you can see the difference between some and none. So that's none. So I want to turn it up, and max is just too much. So somewhere between, so somewhere about 30%, I think has a really nice effect. I'm going to create a new layer, layer 8. Change the normal to add. Again, with the soft brush with an airbrushing, I'm going to choose, well, probably the red to begin with. 5% size, 10% opacity. I'm just drawing kind of like a ring around the edge of our sun. I think that works nicely. Maybe that's just once too many. That works. Maybe just increase the size up to 40%, change it to an orange, and I can just tap a few times like that too. And I think that works too. Again, I can go to that layer and I can remove it. You can see the impact it's had. You can decide whether you want it more contrasty or whether you want it kind of softened in a little bit. Somewhere between those, I think possibly, arguably, is working best. So I'll put it back on, tap on the symbol, the A, and then just put it back 50%. Let's have a look at that. I think that's adding something. I feel like I could make this area really pop a little bit more. I can go back to the top version of layer 2, change that N again to an add, and that's really going to stand out much more than it did, which is great. Really creates more of that dynamic kind of neon contrast. I'm just going to go back to the, not the blurred version of layer 3, but the kind of the original version of it here. So this one here, I'm going to keep on the alpha lock, or put it back on rather. Then I'm going to go for white with the soft brush, with an airbrushing, 2% size, 20% opacity. And I'm just going to start adding a little bit of white in here where the sun kind of meets the ground. So you get that aqua colour meeting these pink purples. And I think that point there just needs to be blended together a little bit better, and I think that works nicely too. Okay, I'm going to leave it at this point, but this tutorial continues over at my Patreon page, where I'm going to delve into some of the adjustment effects and tweak and adjust this image even further. So if you wish to learn more, the link for my Patreon is down in my video description, and I'd love to see you over there too. If you have enjoyed this tutorial, please give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe, and don't forget that all important bell notification to make sure you're notified of all my future videos too. Thanks for watching. I shall see you back here soon. Bye for now.